Hi, I'm Lauren Hallett, and I'm representing the LTER Synchrony Working Group. And the goal of our group is to synthesize population and community synchrony to understand drivers of ecological stability across LTER sites. And my co-PIs on this project are Dan Ruman and Katie Suding. So what do we mean by population and community synchrony? So population, also known as spatial synchrony, occurs when different populations of the same species fluctuate in tandem over time. And so in this example, you can see that in patch 1 versus patch 2 and patch 3, although these are spatially distinct populations, they're fluctuating, they're both increasing at the same time and decreasing at the same time. So that would be population or spatial synchrony. In contrast, community synchrony occurs when different species in the same place fluctuate over time. And so in this example, the red species and blue species are increasing and decreasing together. And historically, people have been interested in spatial versus community synchrony for different reasons. So spatial synchrony or population synchrony receives a lot of attention in terms of pest outbreaks across a landscape, versus community synchrony, the focus has been on ecological stability, or thinking about whether asynchrony as opposed to synchrony might lead to stability of total community properties. So the goal of our working group was to link these two different bodies of research. And part of the motivation for that was that because they've developed separately, there's a lot of different tools and approaches that could be cross-applied among them. So for example, in population or spatial synchrony, there's been a focus on spectral analyses and understanding the time scale of synchrony, as well as spatial dynamics. Versus in community synchrony, there's been a focus on community metrics and linking these dynamics to ecosystem stability. So to address this task, we assembled a diverse group of researchers, and we have quantitative and theoretical ecologists, as well as aquatic and terrestrial field ecologists that have thought about these questions from both the population or the community perspectives. And it was really interesting to bring this group together. I think one of the benefits of a working group is creating a dialogue across those different disciplines can lead to some emergent kind of new ideas. Our group is also gender balanced and diverse. We have a range of career stages, although we rapidly converged to faculty. I think 8 of us over the year and a half of this working group started or acquired faculty jobs, which has been exciting and kind of interesting for the group. And finally, we were really consistent. So we've met for 3 times now, and everyone has come to every meeting except for one time when Xiaopeng started his new job in China and couldn't come and did remotely. So other than that, everyone has participated in every meeting. And the approaches that we've used, first we're using long-term records of both aquatic and terrestrial data. And here the LTER network has been pretty indispensable to this project because a lot of the approaches we're using, wavelet, spectral, and matrix model approaches, many of them require really long time series. And what's exciting about the LTER community is that because so many of these data sets started in the 80s, they're just now long enough that it's appropriate to apply these techniques. So that's the approach we're using. And in terms of how we've interacted, we've iterated between small groups focused on specific papers and questions, and then the full team bouncing ideas around those and finding next steps. We also were very careful to have all of our long-term data go from raw to clean files in a way that's scripted for reproducibility. And all of our scripts are on GitHub, and our new tool development has been as R packages. So some key findings to date. First, one of the things that we found that was really interesting was we applied some of the spectral approaches from population synchrony to community synchrony, and we found that this form of synchrony varies by timescale. So for example, across the LTER grasslands, there tends to be more asynchrony or trade-offs at long time scales, so on decadal oscillations, versus not a lot of synchrony or asynchrony over short time scales. Second, we found that community synchrony really varies by system. And so in general, synchrony is higher in aquatic than terrestrial systems. But one thing that's interesting is it really varies over time within a given site. So for almost all of our sites, there's periods where the community is not being very synchronous, and then there might be some synchronizing event that causes all the species to fluctuate in tandem. And finally, we focused on looking at spatial synchrony of community properties and finding those can really vary. as well as finding tools for scaling from plot level community synchrony up to landscape level. In terms of our potential next directions, there's been interest in cross-domain synchrony, so linking synchrony terrestrial systems with adjacent aquatic. We've also been moving towards linking our synchrony models with resilience theory, expanding to new systems, such as using tree ring data, and then we've been actively soliciting ideas. So I'll put in a little plug. We'll be having a workshop on Tuesday where we're hoping to generate ideas and data sets from the ASM community. And also we're putting together an organized session for ESA, bringing in kind of new ideas and perspectives. In terms of our products and outcomes, so far we have 5 papers that are well on their way. So the first is in review. It's a model of thinking about synchrony at different spatial hierarchies. We have another that's close to being submitted that basically takes the variance ratio, which is a classic community synchrony metric, and makes it timescale specific. We have a group that's focused on the synchrony of community properties, such as richness and diversity indices. We are working on an overall review concept piece, thinking about timescale specificity in synchrony of both community and population level synchrony. And we have kind of the large-scale comparison of aquatic versus terrestrial synchrony using a wide variety of LTER data sets. We've also developed 3 R packages from the group. The first provides tools for wavelet approaches to synchrony. The second helps with matrix model selection. And the third has a timescale specific variance ratio. So those are all public with vignettes, and we've been beta testing them and would love input on them before we publish them to CRAN. There will be 2 data packages associated with this group. So the first is long-term community records for both the LTER grassland and freshwater sites. And the second is LTER grasslands and marine sites that are spatially explicit in how that community data are collected. And finally, just as a plug for working groups, I would say there's sort of softer products or outcomes in terms of professional development. It's been really fun as a group leader to see some of my junior colleagues stepping up and becoming leaders of threads coming from this group. It's been really gratifying to see senior colleagues learning R through this. And I would say everyone in this group is getting better at reproducibility. So this is a softer kind of product of the working group, but is immeasurable but important in terms of that knowledge then being distributed to the networks of members of the working group. So that's a bit about what we're up to. We are really excited to be bringing in new ideas or data sets. So if you have thoughts for our group, please come find me at ASM, and please come to our workshop on Tuesday. Thank you so much.